The Miami Marlins finally make the trade we've all been waiting for. Pablo Lopez is on the move. Let's talk about it here on a bonus episode of the OK Baseball podcast. Well, off-season season is just getting that much more just fantastic, if you will. We finally got an answer to one of the biggest questions this offseason. What will happen with the Miami Marlins pitching staff? Who will go? Will any go? And will Pablo Lopez be the guy? And he was. We finally get the answer on this nice bonus episode here of the OK Baseball podcast. You get many more here in the feed. So if you're just joining us, please go ahead, hit like, subscribe if you're on the YouTube page. And if you're listening in podcast form, go ahead and hit that follow, slam some 5 stars wherever you're listening as well. Really helps that algorithm and lets us get going here as we're just getting started here with this brand new project. But Sean, we had to get on here. We had a couple days to figure this out. Think about it. No quick knee-jerk reactions here. But the Twins trade for the batting champ, Luis Arraez, to the Marlins for Pablo Lopez. And there's a couple other pieces as well. We'll dig into that. But obviously the two main pieces, Arraez heading to Miami, Pablo Lopez going to the Twin Cities. What's your thoughts on that initially?
Yeah, it's funny you say no knee-jerk reactions because I don't know my reaction has changed much since I jerked my knee over this. It on the one hand, it kind of looks rather lopsided. Looks like the Twins got the better end of this deal with the Marlins finally sending one of their pitchers away. We knew it was a matter of time, and I think all signs pointed to Pablo Lopez, but we wouldn't know until something actually happened. And here it is, Pablo Lopez playing for the Twins. The Twins got that much better. And added for the future as well in the same deal, which is a pretty sweet deal if you're a Minnesota Twins fan. For a Marlins fan, you finally got some offense, some hitting, and can hit anywhere and will hit everywhere. So it's kind of a win-win with the edge going to the Twins, I'd say.
Yeah, I got to question the social media guy of the Marlins because he said, if you guys wanted batting, well, here you go. Well, everybody likes batting. It should have been hitting. However, Luis Arraez is one of the best hitting. He's good at batting. That's very true. But one of the best hitters in the game, one of the best contact hitters for sure. I mean, obviously, he was the batting champ last year. He hit over 303 of his first 4 seasons. He posted a 314 career average so far. And then obviously won the batting champ for the American League last season. He's only 25 years old and still has 3 years of control, Sean. I think that was a big deal for Miami because we know they're not yet in that winning window. Lopez was their least controllable pitcher, yet only 26 and had some pitcher of the month type numbers, even when he was dealing with arbitration in the middle of the season last year because of the lockout and that being posted into it. But he's posted sub 400 or sub 4 ERAs in the last couple of years. He's been on the rise. I'm interested to see how that goes, but unfortunately he only has 2 years left to control. That extra year of control and being able to trade a surplus is a very big deal for Miami, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing in this deal is, I guess, what's happening across baseball, and it's the love affair that front offices have with years of team control. And I think that Miami was even paying a little bit extra for that. And because, if you're the Minnesota Twins, you've got Pablo Lopez, and you're not going to get him for the same amount of time. Therefore, you've got to balance it out a little bit. And so, if anything, when I say the Twins win the deal, maybe they don't. It depends on I guess, how you value those years of team control, and front offices love it. So perhaps it's more even than I thought. I think that's the big key here is that Miami's paying for those years of control and a young elite contact hitter, 25 years old. This is going to look really interesting. And of course the ripple effects, and I'm sure we'll get into this here in a little bit after we kind of look at each person. But one thing that, when you look at a hitter like that, and you have to wonder, is it sustainable? Is it fluky? The thing is, no, it's not even close. In fact, next year he's projected Arraez to hit just as well as he did in 2022, and very little defensive value provided. Excuse me, Fangraphs has his defense rated at negative 10.1 last season. So all of his value is coming from the bat, and he's projected at 3.5 wins next year, which is only bat, no power, no defense. That's something special.
I feel like his defense is going to improve a little bit. Now, he's not the best defender by any means. I would call him an average defender, probably right in the middle there. If you're going to rank where you're going to put, infielders, I'd put Arraez probably right smack dab in the middle, but that's not what you traded for. There's no doubt. You trade
Mhm.
for batting, right? Not hitting,
Yeah,
batting.
that's right.
But what I think about Arraez is that I think his defense is going to improve this year because he is going to be solidified at a position. We already saw Kim Nang come out and she had got all the press conference, every big news out in one press conference. I don't think she wanted to meet with the media anymore. She was like, we're going to just give the full shebang right here and go all out. Here's the trade. And then here's about a whole bunch of other blockbuster news, which we'll get to here in this episode as well. But they did mention that he is going to play second base. Now with Minnesota, there was a lot of movement with him playing first. He didn't really have a solid position. With Minnesota now, they're finally going to be able to put Jose Miranda in there every day. I think Arraez was and easily was a surplus for them to be able to move on. I know it's pretty crazy to say that your surplus was the batting champ of the American League last year,
Right.
but that's really was the case for Minnesota. Great problem to have. I think his defense gets better, and I do think you're right when you look at his projections. I'm taking you're looking at Steamer projections.
Mhm.
His stuff is going to be just as good. I think the swap here it figures give Minnesota a very more complete roster. Obviously, we talk about the Carlos Correa addition, him coming back after the Wild saga in free agency. He resigns earlier in January, earlier this month. And then the asset that Arraez came helped bolster their rotation, getting Pablo Lopez. I like the fact that they're going to be able to put Jose Miranda in there every day at third base. They can move Kirilloff to first base, and then you can put Royce Lewis into that rotation or into that lineup, or at least him be a good bench piece. And obviously Correa in the MAC with Polanco. I really like that infield for Minnesota. This is a team now where I think we have to start talking about, can they compete for the AL Central? I think all signs lead to yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing first of all in the AL Central, right? So I mean, their competition is Cleveland, and so I mean, automatically that I think they're in a position to compete. Whether or not they do is a different story. That rotation is rather interesting with Pablo Lopez and Molly and Joe Ryan and Sonny Gray and Kenta Maeda. Like they've got a rotation that I think can keep them in it. It's not going to be, I wouldn't say elite by any means, but you don't have to be. I don't think you need to be playing in the AL Central. So you know what? Good for them. This rotation will be, I think, all of their hopes and dreams for this coming season will be pinned on that group right there.
I think when you add Lopez, I think now you're talking about this rotation, maybe, just maybe squeaking into the top 10 rotations in baseball. I'm going to put him in the 10-12 range. That's where I'm going to put that right now before the season starts. Obviously, a lot of questions about can Mineta come back and be healthy after his injury as well. So that's where I'm going to put him right now, 10-12. What do you think about that? You agree?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And in fact, they have the potential to be even better than that, right? Depending on how things go for them, depending on health and all of the other stuff. I mean, Pablo Lopez just by himself projected at about 10 wins and excuse me, just under 3 wins above replacement, but that ERA is still under 4, right? So if you have a rotation that can do that, I think that it has potential to be even better than that 12 to 10 to 12 range.
We kind of knew that Miami was going to be trading away a pitcher. Obviously, that was like the worst kept secret in baseball this offseason. But when Johnny Cueto got signed by the Miami Marlins, we kind of knew the writing was on the wall. I think that almost put them between a rock and a hard place, if you will, when the trades came in. And I think that's why Miami actually had to add to this piece. And that's why I want to get to real quick on this one. The Twins also received 2 prospects from the Marlins, infielder Jose Salaz and outfielder Byron Churio. Now, everybody you're going to listen to on all of these medias, if you go and look through and listen to any podcast about Byron Churio, not many people know about him. And that's for obvious reasons. 17-year-old guy, native from Venezuela. He played in the DSL last year, had decent numbers in the Marlins organization, but not much on him. Obviously, if you put a Google search for his name right now, the first 3 pictures on Google or in Google. Wow, I said Google and Gulu twice. Look at that. In Google, we're gonna keep that in too. Is Luis Arraez. So pretty interesting there. But I think the crazy part is Jose Salaz. He was the number 5 prospect in the Marlins organization before getting traded, one of their top infielder prospects. He gets over to the Twins. What I find very interesting His MLB pipeline moved Jose Salas from number 5 in the Marlins organization to number 13 in the Twins organization. Not only is the Twins building up a very big major league ball club who can compete to the top of their division, but they're building a very nice farm system, especially infielders, which seems like a nice surplus to have, especially at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I've even seen Salas mentioned as high as their third best prospect. And that's like as an aside, that's kind of what you get when you have everybody in their prospect lists, and they never agree. So, take those for what you will. But the fact that the Twins landed maybe their second best starter, and now a top shortstop prospect, with like big frame for a 19-year-old. Like, this is something that the Twins should be very excited about. And if they're on the end of the phone and they said, well, we'd like Salas, and why don't you just throw in Churriel just to get her done? And, and then they hang up the phone and, they're giggling to themselves, right? Like, this has got to be one of those kind of deals where they just sit back and say, okay, we did a great job here. We did a great job. Again, as we've already said, for now and for the future, I really like, I'll be watching, I guess, closely this year to see how Salas progresses as a 19-year-old. I mean, Steamer projects that he'll get one plate appearance at the big league level this coming season. Now, I mean, obviously, whether or not one plate appearance actually happens or not remains to be seen. But this is a guy who can hit, gets on base, and can steal some bases as well. This is a good pickup for the Twins, even everything else aside. That's a guy you'd love to have in your system.
If you had to make a wild guess right now, I always love doing predictions here, especially where we're in off-season season. Who has a better season? We can base it on F4. We can base it on whatever you want to get betted on between Arraez and Pablo Lopez. Who would you put your money on?
You know what? Well, I know who I would put my money on, and I think that is Pablo Lopez. But I would be incorrect, because Steamer projects that Arraez will be worth 3.5 wins, Pablo Lopez 2.5. But it's so hard, right, to compare a starter and an infielder, right? So like that, take it for what you will, I guess. But I'm going to go ahead and say Arraez is going to have a better year, assuming health and all things being equal and all of that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's going to have a very big contribution to this team. I'm sure we're going to see him at the top of the lineup, being an everyday player. They need batting and hitting as well, by the way. They really need some push with this team, with the Marlins. And I'm looking forward to seeing if that can really be the change. We've talked about it in recaps with divisions past. It really just takes one move to change the culture of a team. We saw it with the Manny Machado trade in San Diego. I'm not saying this trade is as huge as maybe that signing of Machado. However, that is a really thing that can change the case. I think the biggest news, other than the trade for the Marlins, is what the rippling effects come down to it. And you were kind of mentioning it early. We talked about Luis Arraez go to second base. Now that also means, and Kim Nang came out with a crazy press conference saying, you know what? Not only is this trade happening, we're also going to move Jazz Chisholm to center field, a position he's never played before, but he's going to be there. Jazz Chisholm came out and said on Twitter, if you need me to play center field, I'll go out and win a Golden Glove. There was some nice friendly smack talk between him and Michael Harris of the Braves. I thought that was awesome. Watch out for Michael Harris this year. I think he's going to go off now because of that case. Those are always the fun little off-season banters that really turn into some big things. So if Michael Harris comes out and wins the Gold Glove, we know where it started from and boiled from. So, however, Jazz Chisholm, center field. What's your thoughts on that? I think that is a very interesting thing, if nonetheless.
It's funny how in a world where analytics are king, that we still have a front office willing to say, you know what, that guy's fast. Let's put him in center field. Because really, right, like, that's what it comes down to. Now, is he athletic enough? Sure. I have no doubt that he can play the position, but it'll take a while. It's not going to be something that he can just pick up even in spring training. It's going to take, maybe even half a season for him to really feel super comfortable out there and really challenge for that Gold Glove if he really truly believes what he's saying. But it blows my mind how, I think that's my biggest takeaway. Whether Jazz Chisholm can do it or not remains to be seen. he seems to have all the athleticism in the world, so great, and the confidence to boot, right? So let him have at it. But it's funny to me that the sole purpose really is he's fast, so let's give him a shot. That's the part that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around.
Do you think it's more of the fact that they don't believe at him at the shortstop position defensively? Now, obviously, a lot of people are worried about, a lot of teams are worried about the new shift restrictions and the premier defensive play of second and short. Do you think it has anything to do with that? One thing that I'm really worried about with Jazz Chisholm, we saw him with a fantastic bat before he got hurt last year, but he got hurt last year in the infield. He fractured his back, he hurt himself. Center field is not one of those positions where you can take off a single play. I mean, it's not lefty. It's not a corner outfield position that you just hide your worst defensive player in. I'm not saying Jazz is your worst defensive player by any means, but if you're worried about one of your stud guys and their potential longevity because of health, center field is not the position for that. You have to maybe put that consideration in, thinking that his offensive production could falter because of the grueling play of center field. I mean, we've seen it with Mike Trout. So, I mean, and not in the huge aspect, but we've seen that with his injury plagues as well. You got to think that there's a potential concern with that with Jazz Chisholm.
I mean, yeah, I think that might be a concern, regardless of which position he plays. But I agree that center field is a little more demanding than obviously right field or left field or whatever. Certainly DH, right? Which, if you're really concerned about a player's health, you tab them for that DH spot before anything. I think that the move Jazz Chisholm, I think it's kind of not that he was the odd man out, so to speak. But Joey Wendell is tabbed to be the shortstop, and offseason addition, Jin Segura at third. There's not really anywhere to put Jazz Chisholm. I mean, you could try maybe, hey, let's say first base or whatever have you, but that's not really going to use the athleticism that he has, right? I'd rather see Jazz Chisholm learn the position, play a poor-ish center field than have him DHing or trying to learn first base, right? Because it's just a waste of his talents. So is it that they don't necessarily trust him at shortstop? I don't think that's it. Is it to protect him? I don't think that can be it either. As you said, there's just too much work to be done, too much movement and so on in center field. So I think it has more to do like where's the next best place to put his talents to use, really.
Yeah, and another rippling effect coming into play with that one. You brought up first base. I don't know if he will be the everyday first baseman, but there's also rumors coming out that even after the Arraez trade, that the Marlins are in possible consideration for Yuli Gurriel. That is another really fun one as well. Obviously, a little older in age, but that's a need that they need. I mean, I saw it on social media. Locked On Marlins, Peter Pratt put it out showing his Lurie Gurriel's OAA, not good at all. So I don't think he'll be your everyday first baseman by any means. Could be the DH spot, but a nice addition, can bring you some offensive production. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I like it. I like it for Miami. They're running Garrett Cooper, 32 years old at first base. Projected for a win and a half. Whether or not it actually ends up happening or not remains to be seen. Sure, but if I'm Miami, I'm looking at Yuli Gurriel rather closely. Not only because the first base position may or may not need an upgrade, but because this is a young team, right? I mean, we're talking about trading for the the batting champion, and he's only 25, right? This is a young team, and Yuli Gurriel is a veteran who has some wins under his belt, has some trophies in his on his mantle, and so on. So I think that alone is something worth considering if you're the Marlins, and then anything he can chip in with the bat as well is gravy at that point.
Yep, with you. Last year, he did come off a pretty disappointing 2022 season.
Yeah.
146 games. He did slash a 242, 288, 360 with only an 84 OPS plus. Did have 8 knockers, but going into your age 39 season, you got to hope to just have some sort of production. I mean, that you're really screaming designated hitter. Find a way to just give your prospects in that system just a little more time, and that could be exactly that. I could see a nice little 1-year deal. Who knows if he finishes the year with them, but it's one of those plays that if you could flip him if he takes off, you can DFA him if he doesn't work out. Just give your prospects a little more time in the minor leagues. I think that's a really good pickup. So hopefully that's the case. This Marlins team is going to be fun. I think if anything, regardless, this Marlins team is going to be fun. The NL East is a very interesting division. I still think we have a three-way race, but the fourth team, the Marlins, I think are a lot closer to the top three than they are that bottom team with the Nationals. I think they are on their way up. I think they have a very high possibility to sneak their way very close to 500. And I think that's a very good win for this team, especially with Kim Nang coming up for an extension and finding a possibility to further this team's rebuild. On the other hand, for the Minnesota Twins, I really do think that if everything falls together, this is a team that can win that AL Central and find a way to be sneaky in the playoffs. This could be one of those dark horse teams, especially with all the surplus in their minor leaguers and they trade for the right pieces at the deadline. This Twins team could be very dangerous.
I don't disagree there. Cleveland, it should be a little nervous, and I think here's the deal: if Byron Buxton is healthy, we've said this a million times. I feel like on this podcast already, he has the ability to single handedly take their fortunes in his own hands. But then you add Carlos Correa and all of the incredibly young talent that they have around the field. I think this has a chance to be a scary, scary team. And if you're Cleveland, who plays, I guess, a different style of baseball than other teams, they're not going to mash their way to a championship or anything like that. So Cleveland, I guess, is in a position where they need things to go right for them. And Minnesota now just made that much more difficult for them, I think, in the addition of Pablo Lopez. But just overall, how this whole roster now looks like it's coming together, I think that Cleveland should be very scared.
Starting to get the hairs rise up, starting to get the chills. We are just under 1 month until spring training. Still a lot of offseason to go. I mean, then when spring training starts, lots of signings as well, Sean. This season's only going to get more and more exciting, and we are still a long way out. And we got the World Baseball Classic to be excited about too. So lots of fun baseball coming up. We're definitely going to have you covered here at the OK Baseball podcast. Thank you so much for joining our bonus episode talking about Pablo Lopez finally on the move. Luis Arraez heading to the Marlins, and we got Pablo Lopez to the Twins. Pretty interesting, no doubt about it. We'll be back here with our full episodes on Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern time, live on YouTube. So go ahead, join us here. It's going to be a fantastic time. But until then, we'll see you back here next time at the OK Baseball podcast.